Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our outdoors skilled session today. This is the part 2 of this series. This session is going to be focused on outdoor lighting and audio with the Radiance system. My name is Portia. I'm going to be guiding you through today's session. I am also joined by a few panelists. I should mention I'm a member of the training team here at Snap One. I am joined by one of my colleagues on the training team, Brett Kozlowski. I'm also joined by a member of the Radiance product team. So Alex, I don't know if you want to jump in and introduce yourself. Alex will be answering some of the questions coming into our chat and during the breaks throughout our session today.
Thanks, Portia. Hi, I'm Alex Zaliaskis. I'm the Director of Product Management over here at Snap One for speakers. Just a little bit about me. I've been kind of in speaker development on and off my entire career, having designed and been involved in product development for brands like Mirage, uh, Speakercraft, Niles, Proficient, done some work for M&K and a lot of big name brands out there. So I do have a very strong speaker background. Also spent some time at Logitech. Harmony One was one of my team's projects. So yeah, welcome everyone. And hopefully this will be a great session for you to learn a little bit more about Radiance.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alex. And so again, we are in part 2 of this series and focused on the Radiance system today. So in terms of what we will be covering during our session, we will first cover all the different components that are part of the Radiance system so that you'll know what to pick when designing a solution for your client. We'll dive into the planning phase, how you can plan that particular system with particular focus on making some lighting and speaker calculations that you're going to want to be sure to include in your planning phase to ensure that you've got things like the right transformer and the right wire to use when connecting all of those components. We've got some tips and tricks for effective and easy installation for you. And then in the final segment of this session, we'll cover how to configure one of the key components of this system, which is the episode hybrid amplifier. So all of that during our session today. We're actually going to start with a quick poll. I want to kind of find out where we're starting from. So I'm going to pop a question here up on the screen that is going to ask you if you've heard of the Radiance platform before. Some of you may have. If you've heard of the Radiance platform before and are already familiar with some of its components, if you can let me know which one of those components might excite you most, that you're most interested in already. If you don't know, notice there's a choice there for you as well, which indicates that you're just here to learn all about it. So in looking at those choices, the MB1, lighting on and audio on a single wire, 360-degree sound, an all-in-one system, some upsell opportunities, or again, an option for maybe you're just here to learn. So we'll give that just a few more seconds. Thank you to everybody who is responding there. And looks like we have quite a few responses coming in. And hopefully you're seeing those responses pop up on the screen now. So in looking at our greatest number of responses, that is that many of you are here to learn about all parts of the system. You're not familiar with one particular area. That is followed by the lighting and audio on a single wire. So again, we're going to be covering all of those things during our session here today. So thank you for everybody for participating in that. Go ahead and close our poll there. Thank you once again, everybody. And in terms of starting to take a look at this system, we'll start with a differentiation of how this system might be different from others that are out there. So in thinking about those other systems, they are often big and bulky while they provide the ability to use a bass to play a wired music source, or to use that same bass to power on a light, many of those systems end up in a resulting effect that is expensive, rigid, and may have spotty sound coverage. For the Radiance system, in contrast, we're combining audio and lighting simultaneously, really creating an audio with ambiance effect for any outdoor space. In terms of what we're talking about in this system, it is a product line. It is an entire family of outdoor bollard speakers, low voltage lighting, and accessories. This system is based on exclusive patent pending technology by Swarm. This tech allows lighting and audio to simultaneously yet independently be operated on a single standard 2-conductor wire that can be connected in series. So basically, this tech is going to allow lighting, lights, and audio to travel on a single highway within the wire, but it's going to keep the lighting and audio in their own lanes. And it does that by keeping the lights below 140 hertz and the audio above 140 hertz. It is a very modular system that makes this particular system easier to spec and to install because of its modular structure. It has some flexibility to it for customers who may have those last minute little changes that they want to make during the spec and install phases, which we all know are generally not so little things, but the modular structure can help adapt to those requests. And then in terms of the installation phase, instead of needing to dig 2 trenches, just 1 trench can be dug for, again, a single wire as opposed to 2 wires. So that accounts for some additional time and money savings in the installation phase. And it makes it a great fit for retrofitting existing outdoor wiring. This platform can be scaled for a project of almost any size, residential or commercial, just simply using a daisy chain approach. And then finally, in terms of the actual components themselves, they are nearly indestructible. They're made of UV protected die cast zinc design. They are IP66 rated. They're also available in either black or white. So let's dive into the design. And again, during this portion, I'm going to break down each component of this modular structure, giving some specs and some diagram connections so that you'll know what to consider when you are, again, designing a solution for your particular customer. There are really 7 components of this system, and most of them, as you can see, are going to live outdoors. So in terms of those actual components, we're going to start with the heart, which is really the MB1, and that stands for nothing less than magic box, or nothing short than magic box. And so this really is that magical component that is going to create that 2-lane highway on a single wire where audio and lights are going to travel simultaneously yet independently. It's mounted outside, usually near the lighting transformer. And in taking a deeper dive into this key component, it is a passive filter. Notice it has no power cord attached to it. It's again going to transmit the audio above 140 hertz, the lighting below 140 hertz. It has the ability to support up to 500 watts of audio, 300 watts of lighting. It does need to be used for this system with a hybrid amplifier with DSP settings to keep the audio and lighting separate so that you don't have unexpected lights flickering when the audio is playing. We are going to talk more about those DSP settings during the later portion of our session here today and how to configure them. And we've got another view here for you of the MB1, and that is the bottom. of this device. And taking a look at the bottom, you can see here that all of the connectors are labeled so that you will know exactly how to use them. First, there is a fuse reset so that if there is an overcurrent event, you can simply press that button to reset the fuse. And then as we take a look at inputs and outputs, our first input here is the wire terminal for the lighting transformer, followed by the wire terminal for the 70-volt hybrid amplifier. And then the output, of course, going to that 2-conductor wire that leads to the speakers and the lights. Finally, there's several LEDs at the bottom. Each of those will illuminate based on the first one, if their MB1 senses a signal on the light power input. And then similarly, the audio LED would illuminate if the MB1 is going to sense audio on the 70-volt input, audio 70-volt input. And then there is finally a fault error if there's an overcurrent event or the temperature is too hot. So that is, again, the first component, really the heart of the system, the MB1. The next component is going to be the lighting transformer. The lighting transformer is going to connect to that lighting power input you just saw on the bottom of the MB1, going to be located outside. And in terms of lighting transformers that can be used with this system, you can use aftermarket off-the-shelf lighting transformers as long as they can operate from 12 to 15 volts alternating current, accommodate a max load of 300 watts. Then they can be used. It is important to know that with this system, dimming's not supported, neither is change in color temperature for the lighting. Alex, go ahead and jump in.
On the lighting transformer, just wanted to clarify, it'll handle 12 to 15 volt AC or DC lighting transformers, so both.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you. Noticing you just have the alternating on there. Thank you. So thanks for jumping in. So in taking a look at the possibilities in terms of those that are available from Snap One, we have the FX Luminaire PX transformer and the FX Luminaire DX transformer. So the difference between these two models, the PX comes in two different models, one that has a timer and one that does not. And then another choice, alternative choice, would be the Hampton Bay low voltage transformer that's available from Home Depot, and all of these able to accommodate a max load of 300 watts. It's also important to know that you'll only need one lighting transformer per zone in this system. As we move on with the other components, we'll move on to the hybrid amplifier. Of course, that's going to be the component that will live indoors. We recommend our episode hybrid 1000 watt 2-channel amplifier, and you only need, I mentioned earlier that you only need one lighting transformer per zone. Similarly, you will only need one amplifier along with that MB1 per zone of the Radiance system you're designing. And in thinking about its connections, it's going to connect to the amp 70-volt output is going to connect to that audio 70-volt input that you saw on the bottom of the MB1. So all of these connections beginning to come together and fill those inputs in the MB1. As we take a look at the episode hybrid amplifier, it does have 2 channels. And in terms of how we'll use the 2 channels for this system, we'll use 8 ohms on one channel, which is going to go to the subwoofers. And then we'll use 70 volts on the other channel. That's going to connect to the MB1. I mentioned earlier that it is important that DSP parameters must be used on this hybrid amplifier. So again, I'm going to show you how to configure those later in the session. Those DSP parameters can be found on the Snap One website. I'll show you where they are. They're here in the they are in the support tab right there on the Snap One site. So I'm going to show you later in the session again how to download them, how to configure them for this particular hybrid amplifier. If you're going to use a third-party amp, you're going to need to follow those same specific DSP settings so that you, again, the lighting and audio stay separate and you don't have unexpected actions or lighting from either of those. Moving right along in our components as we begin to really put this whole system together, we'll take a look at the subwoofers. And as you can see from the diagram, a 12-gauge burial wire will support a run of up to 300 feet for the subwoofer. We recommend at least one subwoofer per Radiance system. If you have multiple zones, each should have one. If you're anticipating more than 8 speakers, you should consider an additional subwoofer as well. And our recommendation from the Radiance line in terms of subwoofers includes one that has a 10-inch high output that has low impedance, meaning it's all meant to integrate into the system using a dedicated amplifier channel. This particular model is also IP66 rated. It has been made with a roto molding manufacturing technique that includes a powder-coated aluminum cap to ensure consistency and strength and durability. So all that is to say that this subwoofer can deliver bass, whatever the weather is outside. In addition, it has 3 different installation options, so it's very flexible. It can be surface mounted using the surface mount brackets. It can be partially buried using those feet as anti-flotation devices, or it can be simply set on the ground. So again, we recommend at least one subwoofer per system, one subwoofer per about 8 speakers, and one subwoofer per zone. The last component, as we move right along through this system, modular system, would be the mounts. And the mounts are really where all the wiring is going to connect. So the mounts are going to come with wire tails. They're also going to include exterior grade silicon filled wire nuts to waterproof the physical connections of these mounts. Again, this is where all of the wiring is going to be connected. This means that from the mounts, it's easy to swap out lights, speakers, speaker blanks. The mounts also come with a protective cap to protect them during installation. You should definitely leave that cap on until you're ready to attach those speakers or speaker blanks. And that cap even comes with a leveler on top to help you during that installation. There are a variety of mounts that are available. There is a surface mount that is made for horizontal surfaces, such as a deck. There's a wall mount that can be used on fences or on walls. An in-ground mount that is easy to install includes a rubber cap to keep it free from damage during installation. And then finally, there is a pendant mount that is useful for overhangs or ceilings and has a 3-meter wire that is already a part of it. So I've got a quick peek for you here of some of the mounts that are fully installed. So as you can see, when all of these components begin to come together, the speakers, the lights, the speaker blanks, they really have a seamless look and feel. They can be installed right side up, upside down as well. And so that really is the foundation of the system. Once we've got the foundation of the system in place, we're ready to consider which of those mounts should have speakers lights, speaker blanks. And so we'll first take a look at the speakers. And I know you took a quick peek at these. If you've attended last week, you saw these very briefly, but we'll begin to take a more in-depth look at the outdoor bollard speakers that are part of this system. So when these are paired with a Radiance subwoofer, the 3-inch driver in the bollard speaker can really deliver full range full range audio performance. There is a 360-degree wide dispersion pattern for sound that is going to allow for or enable uniform coverage without hot spots, whether the speakers are again mounted right side up or upside down. You're also no longer limited to having to seek out places that are just around the perimeter. These speakers are going to give you the flexibility with that coverage to install them wherever you might like. There is an additional tap setting at the bottom of the speaker that you can think of as a way to further adjust the volume. So that can be at 2, 4, 8, or 16 watts. What this means is that this same speaker could be used, same speaker model can be used throughout the system. If you've got an area that's going to be noisier, such as by a pool, those tap settings can be set at the higher end at 16 watts. And if you've got an area that is going to be quieter, then you can adjust that volume at the lower end for those areas. So again, same model can be used throughout the entire solution. There is an easy way to attach these speakers to the mounts. It's as easy as twisting and then locking them into those mounts. Same is true for the lighting components that can go on top. And I'll give you an example of that here in just a few minutes in terms of how quick and easy that really is this model is to attach to those other components. In addition to speakers, there are speaker blanks. These can be really useful for balancing out aesthetics. They are also what you'll use for components that need to be lighting only. And in terms of thinking of lighting, so on those mounts, we can put speakers, speaker blanks, and then we can begin to attach lighting. In terms of the outdoor lighting, these components are able to mimic common landscape lighting patterns. So there's an option for a spotlight that is going to use 4.5 watts. There's an option for a ring light that would use 2.5 watts. There's an option to have both running, both the ring and spot. And so that is going to use, as you can see, 7 watts in that particular scenario. Moving between those 3 options is as easy as a flip of a switch that is on the bottom of the lighting module itself. So those patterns can change over time as long as you have made the necessary calculations to support your total wattage for the system. And it's important to know as well that the color temperature for both the ring and the spotlight are the same. They are both 2700 Kelvin in terms of that temperature. Similarly, they twist and lock into those speaker blanks very quickly, very easily. A final note here, though, about our lighting. Third party, outdoor lighting is not supported for the lighting. So for the lighting transformer, but not for the lighting modules themselves. So we've taken a look again at the MB1, the lighting transformer possibilities, hybrid amplifier possibilities, the subwoofers, the mounts, the speakers, and the lighting. And so before we dive into the planning and the calculation phase, I'll pause here. Alex, do you have any questions that we should stop and address live before we move on to the next section?
Sure.
Or any additional you want to add?
No, just a question on what about multiple zones? I think you answered that great. Each zone will require basically its own MB1, its own amplifier, and its own lighting transformer or isolated lighting transformer zone.
Okay. Thank you. Fantastic. Yes, one of each of those for each zone. And that will be important as we dive into the planning phase. So now that we know everything that is possible to put together in this system, we'll begin to plan for a particular scenario. And again, we're going to spend some time focused particularly on some calculations that you're going to want to make sure that you're supporting each of those components in the best way possible in this system. And so I know that my colleague Brett mentioned ways to plan for each system last week, and I'm just going to reiterate that whether it's for a project like Radiance, whether it's for an outdoor project or any project, be it that includes Snap One components or not, we want to be sure to meet with the client to really hear in their own words what the goal for the system is. In this particular case, where do they want lighting? Where do they want audio? How are they going to be comfortable interacting with, or how do they envision controlling the lighting and the audio for this system? So certainly starting with meeting with the client, hearing the goals, their desires in their own words is the best place to start. And then putting together a plan to meet those expectations and the bill of materials that is really going to ensure that it is something that is within their budget to meet their expectations for the solution. And so again, in terms of meeting with the client for this particular solution, you're going to want to find out, where do they want audio? Where do they want lighting? Where do they want both perhaps in this system? And again, how do they want to interact with it? And so those are the things that you'll want to gather during that particular client meeting. So again, where do they want audio? Where do they want lighting? Where do they want both? What do those areas look like? What else is going to be going on inside those areas or within those areas for their particular family and for their entertainment purposes? And then once you've gotten a clear sense of what the customer wants, you're ready to begin planning the project. So we are going to plan a particular project here today for the Woods family. And after meeting with the Woods family, we are going to move forward with their expectations, which are that they're going to want some audio and lighting around the two dining areas that we've gotten around the pool area. They're also envisioning some lighting for the pathway. And they're also envisioning some lighting for this corner area that includes a tree and some additional landscaping. So that's what we'll be designing for and putting a solution for during our session here today. So earlier I mentioned that we're going to start with the subwoofers. Earlier I mentioned that we recommend at least one subwoofer for each system. We recommend further, if they're going to be multiple zones, one subwoofer per zone. And another way to gauge it, if they're going to be more than 8 speakers, consider adding an additional subwoofer. That's likely the case here, looking at what we're designing for, that we're going to have more than 8 speakers. So we are going to include 2 subwoofers in our solution. And so, in looking at what we will begin to include, 2 subwoofers. We're going to plant those 2 subwoofers by the 2 dining areas, and we're going to place them near those walls to help reinforce the lower frequencies there. So far we have 2 subwoofers, placing them again by the dining areas where we know we are going to have audio. And then as well, we're going to need to begin planning for the speakers. For speakers for adequate audio coverage, we recommend 6 to 12 feet apart. So that's the rule of thumb that we're going to stick with as we take a look at the pool and the dining areas. So 6 to 12 feet apart for consistent audio coverage. And so in planning for the Woods family, we are going to include speakers, and notice those are eventually going to include lighting in a moment. That's speakers by the pool area. And we're going to have then 4 speakers by the first dining area and 2 by the second dining area. And visually, you can see that those speakers behind the pool area are going to be a little bit further apart than those by the dining area, but still staying within that recommendation of 6 to 12 feet to provide that best audio coverage. So we've got 11 speakers so far in our system. And then taking a look at the lighting areas, we are going to include lighting only in the corner by the tree and landscaping, and some lighting that we will want by the pathway here. So we designated the areas for those lighting. We'll talk more about which lights we're going to use on each of those modules here in just a moment. So we've got our speakers, we've got our lights, we've got our subwoofers, and now we're ready to begin taking a look at our mounts. And I apologize, I'm going to come back to our mounts here. So I went a little too quickly over that. So in planning for our mounts, we certainly need the right mounts for the right areas. So we are going to use wall mounts for the area by the pool. We're going to use and plan for in-ground mounts near the dining areas. So now we officially have all of our, beginning to have all of our foundation for the system, the modules that should be included in addition to the MB1. And then as we begin to plan for those other components, the lighting transformer and the wire gauge, that is going to be dependent on the light and speaker settings. And those are the calculations that we are going to focus on next. So thinking about the lighting that we are going to be using, we have lighting that is going to be on each of those speakers by the pool area, by the dining area. Those are going to be including both the ring and spotlights. So we're going to want to need to account for 7 watts for each of those modules. And then we have 2 lights that are going to be ring lights over here by the pathway. And then one that is just going to be a spotlight over by the corner there. So as we think about each of those and begin to account for what our total requirements are in terms of total watts that needs to support this system, you're going to then have those 13 that are going to need to support 7 watts. We'll have the one that needs to support the 4.5 watts in the corner, and the 2 that are going to be at the beginning of the pathway that are going to need to support 2.5 watts. That's going to bring us to a total of 100.5 watts that this system is going to need to support. And then in thinking about what else we need to accommodate for, we are going to need some headroom. And so we're going to account for that. In terms of what we are comparing this to, remember that our MB1 can support up to 300 total watts, right, of lighting. And we're well below that. But we are going to want to leave about 20% of that for headroom. And so really we're talking about 240 watts, but still we're comfortably below that limit in terms of the MB1 support for the system that we have begun to put together. So our total wattage requirement 100.5, which is again far below the 300, excuse me, max there. And so let's take a look then at audio. Remember our MB1 can support up to 500 watts of audio. And we are going to want to reserve some headroom here. So really what we're gearing towards is 400 total watts of audio. But let's find out where we are first in terms of our speakers, and the tap settings that we're going to select is really what we're focused on. So that little adjustable volume that we were taking a look at the bottom of the speaker, that's really what we're thinking of here in terms of our needs. And so as you can see, those back by the pool, those are going to be at a higher volume than the rest. So we'll count for 16 watts for each of those speakers. And then we will use 8 watts for the remaining. That's going to bring us to a total of 100 120 watts for our entire system. And then remembering that we're looking to be sure that we are below the 500 watts of audio, leaving headroom. We want to stay below the 400 watts of 400 watts. And so we are below those limits. So as we made those different calculations, right, we wrote those settings out for each module. There is, as you begin to design your own solutions, there is a handy tool that you can use, which is located in the final 2 pages of the episode Radiance installation guide. So this is something that is available right on the Snap AV website. You'll find it in the speakers and in the subwoofer support tab of the system. So I'm also going to include a link directly to it in the chat there. And so this is something that you could use as your own planning and guide worksheet. And as you do, notice that it's got those limitations right there. It's got the total limitation of 500 watts of audio. And then it's got the reminder to plan for 100 watts of headroom. Same is true for lighting here at the bottom. So this can be a handy tool for you to use as you begin to plan for your own customer installation. So we've got our light and speaker tab settings, and then we're ready to really use those to identify the final areas of our solution, or the final components of our solution, which are going to include our lighting transformer and our wire gauge for this system. And as we do, thinking about the wire gauge that is to be used, that is going to be determined by the total lighting power. Total lighting power is what we're going to use to determine that, and it must be direct burial rated. So we've got those 2 factors that we will use. And then we have this handy chart. This is also available in the installation guide that I just shared with you. And then taking into our total lighting watts requirement for the system, we were at 100.5. So that's going to land us in the 120 watt row. And then for this particular customer's project, and thinking about their project, we're going to be at 120 feet in terms of our need here. And so again, moving over from our 120 watts, we are going to land for that 120 foot distance. We're going to land with a 12 gauge wire. So in terms of the wire itself, we don't need to factor in headroom. We do need to think about the lighting transformer as well. So we've got our wire gauge that we've determined here, and then we need to think about our lighting transformer, and that's also going to be based upon our total lighting requirements. And remember, that is 100.5 watts. So again, leaving for the lighting transformer about 20% headroom. A 200 watt lighting transformer would do it for this particular project. So that total lighting requirement is both determining the gauge of our wire for our burial wire and determining the lighting transformer that can be used. So in making those determinations, then we're ready for the 3rd step, which is to prepare a list of materials. And in doing so, your list of materials might look something just like this, where we've got each of the components of the system broken apart. We would add in the latest and greatest pricing from Snap AV, and then we've got our total solution pricing ready to present to the customer. And of course, with the understanding of knowing how this is going to fit in the budget that we have gathered from the customer during that initial planning phase. And any installation costs. So in thinking about installation as the next phase. I'll go ahead and pause here. Alex, any questions or anything additional that you want to add before we move into installation and configuration?
Actually, Alex, I think you should
Oh,
address Colden's maybe live because that's a really great question on how you can break apart the system and reduce wire length.
Yeah. So the question is, can we connect like two 80-foot lengths instead of a single 160-foot length off a single MB1? And the answer is yes. If you want to go, to the left of the property with one run, the right of the property with the other run, as long as it's on the same zone, you're fine with doing that.
yeah, that was a great question. Thank you. Okay, so moving into our installation tips and tricks that we have for you today for the Radiance system. So you're going to want to, of course, turn off your transformer and amp when making any of the connections. You're going to want to use your discretion with the placement of the speakers and the lighting. So if you don't have to put them right by sprinklers, then don't put them in those particular locations. You've got some flexibility, quite a bit of flexibility with the modules where they can be placed, along with the customer's configuration of what they already have in their area. And so you can use a daisy chain approach with the speakers. You'll want to use a daisy chain with the speakers. You'll want to hide the transformer and the MB1 from plain sight. There's no need for them to be out. And so we don't need those out and about for the customer in terms of their aesthetics. And then use that protective rubber cap. You saw that earlier. Use that up until the point that you are ready to install the lights and speakers, leaving that on. And then I mentioned earlier, I would show you how quick and easy it is to combine the mounts and the speaker and the lighting unit together. And so I've got a quick glimpse of that for you, as well as a quick view of each of those components. So, and taking a look at how you're going to put all of these things together and making something easy and seamless. So taking a look at that mount there, remember the bottom is just going to be simply twist and lock. And then same thing for the top. If the lighting module needs to go on, it's as easy as twisting and locking it in. And then just moments, we've got the entire module constructed. And so a quick peek again at the mount. There's the level on top for that mount. You're going to leave that on again until you can install speakers. There's a quick view by my fingers of that switch that can be used to easily adjust between the different lighting options, ring, spot, or both. And then that little dial that can be used to adjust the different settings for volume settings for each of the speaker modules. And then finally, in terms of configuring, we'll take a look at configuring today one of the key components of this system, which is going to be the hybrid amplifier. And so I mentioned that you're going to be sure to need to, or you'll easily find rather those DSP settings, you're going to find those in the support tab of the different components for this system. So I'll show you exactly where they are on the website itself, but that's where we'll be looking, which is in the support tab. And then further, there is a guide for adding the Radiance speaker DSP settings right below it. So that can be a very helpful document for using and applying these settings. This document is going to step you through each of the steps that I am going to be showing live. So that document is available as well, and can be a very helpful guide in retracing through each of these steps. So let's go ahead and take a look at first where you're going to find these parameters and then how you're going to use them. So again, I mentioned that you're going to find them right on the Snap AV website. And if you go down into the support tab, as promised, you're going to see those parameters that are available, as well as a guide for installing them. So we can see those parameters right here. So step one is that you're going to find those parameters. Then you're going to download the zip file, and then of course unzip those parameters. And then you're ready to use them, which is going to mean logging in to the Episode Radiance Hybrid Amplifiers user interface itself. Once you log in, you'll go to, there's a separate preset tab that I am on already right now. And then you're simply going to, once you have extracted that file, you're going to be looking for, and again, the instructions will guide you directly to this. You're going to find the Radiance DSP file, and you're going to load it. It will let you know when it's completed. It will likely take a moment or two longer than it just did, since I have done this before. And then those parameters will show right here at the top of the list as default 1. And so then you can give those parameters a name. And I don't mean I need my number 1 there. And then I'm going to save that preset. And then I'm going to load that preset with its name. And so you're going to see in a moment that those settings have been applied, and that is the preset for the hybrid amp. So again, our steps were to download those parameters from the Snap AV site, to unzip them, have the file ready, log into the user interface for the hybrid amp, where we can load the file. And once it's loaded, giving it a name that is reflective of those settings. And then you're going to see that preset once it's applied right here in the upper right-hand corner. So a quick process to making those settings within the amplifier, and that would be for our episode hybrid amplifier. You're also going to want to apply those settings, whether you're using a third-party amp, or when you're using a third-party amp as well. So as we begin to round out installation and configuration, again, we did take a look at this process. What questions, any questions or any additional tips that you might want to jump in with, Alex or Brett?
Not for me. I think you did a great job.
Yeah, no, great job, Portia. I guess the only thing I would throw in there is when I am doing calculations for lighting and speakers, I guess easiest way to do it is figure for the worst, right? Figure 16 watts for every single speaker, figure 7 watts for every single light.
7.
One of the things
Yes.
that makes the Radiance system so great is a customer can technically go and adjust those settings kind of on the fly. Maybe they want to ring one day and then change to a spot, or maybe they change it to both. So it's almost safe to just figure, hey, 7 watts for every single light, just to kind of make that calculation a little bit easier for yourself. But great info, and so far we have no open questions either.
And that is a great point. You saw how quick and easy and accessible those changes are for the customer to make. And as Brett mentioned, they might want to make that change for one particular party or for a season, and then change them back. So thanks, Brett. That can be a good preparation to make, knowing that the system is flexible and that they may want to make those changes. So, and thinking about this as a part of a series, part 1 was last week. We're in part 2 now, and then part 3, the series will conclude next week with everything else for outdoor, creating outdoor experiences for your customers. And so we do really value your feedback for each of these sessions. So as we close out our session for today, if you could be so kind as to scan the QR code that you're seeing on your screen and provide that valuable feedback to us so that we can continue to shape the sessions in the best way possible for what you may be looking for, we would greatly appreciate it.
And I am also throwing the survey right in the chat for everyone. And to give you guys a little incentive, we're going to be going and giving away a little prize for all those who take the survey. We're going to do a terrain 4.1 system for you. So 4-inch satellite speakers plus a subwoofer. So please take your time, give us your feedback. We did have a couple more questions come in. If you got a moment, Alex, for us to address these. One of them is more lighting. How do the lights turn on and off? Is it just on a timer, optical sensor? Well, there's some options there, aren't there?
Yeah, so however that lighting transformer programs to turn lighting on and off, the system is kind of agnostic from that.
Yeah.
You would automate it and control it the same way you would if it was outside of the system. So some have the optical, some can be programmed with a sunrise, sunset, with a timer, and some of them can be automated with a control system. So this system is completely agnostic of that.
Perfect. And how do we hear these speakers in person? Visit your local Snap One partner store to go and hear these in person. I believe almost all of our locations actually have some of these available.
Yes.
Yeah, here's a couple of questions that I guess I couldn't necessarily answer. Will you showcase these at Expo in Oakland tomorrow? That I cannot say. I apologize.
Yeah.
And then there was a question about, there's a comment that there's no partner store currently in San Antonio, Texas. I know there is in the Dallas area, but I don't recall if there is in another area in Texas. Let's see.
And here's another question. What are the settings that are being changed when uploading in the file? And correct me if I'm wrong, they're quite kind of going, there's a crossover setting that's adjusting for that 140 hertz. That's probably the biggest one that's being adjusted there.
Yes, correct. The 140 hertz, it's a very steep crossover. It ensures that the lighting and the audio don't interact with each other. So that's why it's absolutely of utmost importance. If there's only one thing you learn from this seminar is you must use the DSP to run Radiance. Otherwise, all bets are off. I mean, we had things from blinking lights to you have to have a DSP amp with those settings. If it's not a hybrid amp, you can get the DSP settings online and you can program those DSP settings into another DSP amplifier, but you must have the DSP for it to operate properly.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, the only other open question is someone trying to find a closer local partner store, which I'm not 100% sure I can address that one.
So in Texas, it looks like they're in Carrollton, Austin, and Houston. But again, I did see your comment that what you're really looking for is San Antonio. Okay, well, I think that's going to bring us to a wrap for today's session. Again, thank you for joining us today. We know your time is really valuable, and taking time outside the field can be a big decision. So we really do appreciate it when you take time to invest in learning about what Snap One has to offer. And we'll look forward to seeing you on next week's session. Bye for now, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.